Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the esteemed FaceTime with Leaders, an initiative by World Development Corporation. I am Falak Zaid Khan, anchor at World Development Corporation. FaceTime with Leaders is a platform for industry titans to share their experiences, thoughts, ideas, and best practices in order to inspire one another and future leaders. In a nutshell, we attempt to encapsulate the multi-decadal learnings acquired by these industry leaders. We also hope that by conducting these FaceTime with Leaders interviews, we can bring together a global community of eminent personalities. By bringing together such visionaries on one platform, we hope to play a part in inspiring the lives of other leaders. Great learnings from great leaders undoubtedly assist everyone by identifying, nurturing, and using the trade secrets that are proven success formulas for many. And this is what we aim for with these sessions by making them a gathering of industry stalwarts and a knowledge sharing community. We have one such corporate leader on FaceTime with Leaders with us today, Ms. Kashish Kapoor. Hello, welcome, Ms. Kapoor. We are glad to have you here today with us on FaceTime with Leaders.
Hi, Palak. Thank you so much. It's a privilege to be here.
Thank you so much. Same here. So let me give you a quick brief about Ms. Kashish Kapoor. She has a career spanning over nearly 2.5 decades, marked by significant contributions in the domain of human resources, that is HR, and leadership roles across diverse industries. She has numerous professional accomplishments, namely her recognition as a thought leader in HR, participating as a panelist and contributor to esteemed forums and publications. She has been featured among the top 100 HR superachievers by the World HRD Congress in both 2018 and 2019 and was nominated for the Telstra Women Business Leader Award in 2016. She has also received the Women Leadership Award and the Diversity Leadership Award at the World HRD Congress in 2016 and 2015, respectively. Moreover, she has also been honored with the HR Leadership Award by World HRD Congress in 2024. In terms of her current job role, she is giving her invaluable service at NEC Corporation India in the capacity of its CHRO. During her committed service at NEC, she has been an integral member of the India leadership team. Her responsibilities include drafting the NEC India HR strategy, defining HR priorities, and collaborating with global HR leaders to implement global priorities such as One NEC Way, job grading, and global mobility. She actively manages HR operations, oversees business transitions, and plays a key role in organizational effectiveness. She has successfully led engagement for outsourcing shared services and played a pivotal role in establishing the Global Shared Services Center in India. So, Ms. Kapoor, to begin with, could you briefly describe your professional journey and how it has led you to your current role as CHRO at NEC Corporation India?
Hi, thank you, Falak. I started 27 years back. It's been a long journey, but it's also been a span where I have seen how human capital has evolved. From a time when I started, HR used to be something that I used to do as a role, processing payroll, hiring, getting employees to fill up their recruitment forms, getting them on board, ensuring that their pay slips were delivered, a little bit of trainings here and there, 5-6 years down the line, and then their exit process. So that was what HR was. Till about 2000, when in the 2000s, when I was with IBM, I think that was the decade when HR transformation began, and I was fortunate enough to be a part of that. Practices and policies started becoming far more global. The talent in India and the talent globally, started. There was a mix that started beginning to emerge. There was a lot of mobility of talent globally that started happening. And I was fortunate to be pivoting a lot of that with IBM, because IBM at that stage was transforming its practices to become a more global organization with more uniform practices. The prevention of sexual harassment was something which kind of got embedded in the corporate at that stage. Disciplinary cases and redressal forums got expanded to just beyond HR. And I was leading one of those verticals in that stage of my career. It was also a stage when we began the discussion around diversity and inclusion started warming up and going beyond just gender. So gender diversity, people with disability, the whole LGBT piece, these were all nuances of diversity, which started coming at that stage in the arena of people management and practices. I was again fortunate to have gotten exposure to all of that. I then moved to Cornell, where I worked as a community leader as part of the international group of students with an exposure in organizational development. Came back to India, and then I was with Tata Communications for a period of time. During that stint, I think the biggest exposure I got and I gained, which added great immense value to my career, was of BSNL had just been taken over by the Tatas. And that merger and acquisition and exposure to handling that plethora of employees and the practices in terms of policies and driving diversity, in fact, establishing diversity for them. I think those were some of my key areas of focus at that stage. Then I joined NEC Corporation. It is a Japanese organization where I am the CHRO today. And I think the platform and the mandate that I got over here was to ensure, one was an integration of all entities within India. We had multiple entities, so merging of those to consolidate NEC India's presence in India. Handling the global branches that were offshoots of NEC India across the globe, namely Tokyo, Singapore, the Americas, and in the Middle East and Australia. Then COVID happened, and COVID transformed. COVID was a key disruptor. I think HR got a more center seat at the table. HR became a true business partner at that stage. I evolved personally in centering a lot of business strategic discussions in a global world that was transforming by force. The workspaces, redesigning the workspaces to make them hybrid, from completely remote to hybrid, transforming the entire culture piece to integrate this talent that was not open and receptive and disciplined to drive productivity, utilization, output, efficiency in a remote and a hybrid environment. The transformation of an organization, not only in terms of business, but in terms of both people and culture, is where I drove a lot of focus, and I continue to do that. And a big stamp that came in at that point of time was digitalization. We started talking about it when COVID hit us, and it got amplified. I think the journey, truly, in my experience, has got really amplified post-COVID. And I have had the fortune of driving the digital transformation and the digital roadmap for human capital in NEC. And the footprints that we are creating, I think they will drive and they will pivot what is going to be the future of workplace. So that's been my journey in all these 27 years, while alongside I continue to play the role of a mother. I've been an avid runner for the last decade or so. So that is where I find my zen every time I'm out running. And I think that's where I'm able to synthesize my thoughts as well. So that's me.
Wow, that's indeed a very interesting and a wonderful career journey so far, and a professional journey so far, we must say. So moving ahead, we want to know, like, what are some of the best HR practices you have implemented or observed throughout your career, and how have they contributed to organizational success?
Okay, let me try and answer this a little differently, Palak. I think what I have seen working as cultural elements that have driven best practices, one has been the empathy, the trust, and the resilience. I think these three have been stabilizing factors that have culturally motivated best practices in organizations, such as um, the creating a platform of inclusivity. Um, Not just driving gender diversity or any other form of diversity as a mandate, but fundamentally seeding that. My first exposure to diversity and inclusion happened in IBM. And I have seen the strength of that organization in coming forward and, and initiating inclusivity as a mandate across the organization for for purely business reasons, because there is a huge potential in the women talent pool, which even today, as we talk, has not even been half utilized to what is available.
That's true.
As a young mother, I experienced that when I was allowed to work from home in the year 2007 for an entire year, and not because I asked for it, but because I was told that why don't you just work from home? And it's absolutely fine. So fortunately, some of these things just came to me, and I think those were things which embedded and which created the value of some of what diversity stands for, what is inclusion, how we propel careers, and how organizations can be catalysts of imbibing and bringing on board the best talent pool and retaining them. So I think that is that is one instance which has led me to continue to be an ambassador for DNI, and to ensure that wherever I am, in whichever organization I'm a part of, I'm able to build the empathy and the resilience to drive inclusivity. There is a business value and there is a business proposition, and it shows. The results show. The stakeholders, the customers appreciate that. There's a lot of goodwill, and it's good for the brand. Second, I think the world is changing. The more global, the more adaptable the policies are in the human resource area, and the more dynamic they are, and as much as they can keep speed with what the external world is, which in the last 3-4 years we've seen has been extremely volatile. I think that ability to adapt, I think, is another element which is very important, which shows the resilience of an organization towards the talent. That is something which I have learned in all my global stints. It just brings the talent much closer home. It binds the partnership of it creates the partnership between the manager and the team. It drives collaboration. It inculcates stakeholder management. These are softer behaviors and traits which transform into the cultural fabric of an organization, but the practices and the policies and how global and how adaptive and how continuously and how they're continuously revamping themselves to be able to look towards the future and be more futuristic in their elements. I think that is a big boon for any organization. And I think the third is the digital transformation that is happening, and how we are personally in my own space, how we are able to today. You and me are having this conversation on Zoom. Maybe 5 years back, as recent as 5 years back, the mandate would have been very different. I would have had to come down to some place, or you would have had to travel somewhere. We've come together. We've been able to synthesize and bring in the energy of the human potential together in one space. That is the power of digital. The generative AI today complements that digital. And I think we are not there. It is evolving as a best practice to how we are partnering with Gen AI to strengthen the human capital space. There is a whole thought process and a dialogue that, Gen AI will take over human capital, and there will no longer be the need for human capital. Well, I'm a firm disbeliever of that. I don't agree with that. I think the empathy and the connect that a human interaction and engagement can drive, I think technology can only complement and strengthen that. And this arena of digital transformation is going to set those footprints for the future, where we will be able to build in using IoT, using blockchain, AI, ML. I think using all of these technologies, we are only strengthening what we are delivering in terms of employee experience and engagement. I have, as a best practice, found that the experience that today I am able to deliver to any candidate while onboarding them in a matter of hours is an outcome of this, from a time when it used to take 2 to 3 days to onboard a candidate. It's a matter of hours. This best practice has enabled us to do exits and full and finals in a matter of hours. This digital transformation as a best practice has brought us closer. So we are able to today onboard talent anywhere in the globe. Locational preferences have started taking a backseat. We are able to expand the talent pool by bringing in a lot of diverse talent, be it the women talent pool, be it tier 2, tier 3 people from those areas, be it the millennials, be it the gig workers. The fact that we today have such a vast and diverse talent pool is purely because of the footprints that digital transformation has created for us in today's day and age.
Yes, that's definitely there. So moving ahead, like you have received several prestigious awards and recognitions throughout your career, including being featured as a top 100 HR super achiever by the World HRD Congress. Could you share some insights into how these recognitions have impacted your career trajectory and leadership style?
Thank you. I think I have learned, this has been a journey. I have learned from being extremely excited and delighted on receiving an award to being very, very humble about it. I think that is one of the things one of the ways it has impacted me. I have also learned to appreciate my mentors, my managers in the past, who have at times been brutal in their expectations. But I think because they were brutal, they were able to drive in me the focus, the commitment, the accountability, the ownership. And in a way, they were my true mentors and have shaped me. So this is just a recognition and validation of what has got invested in me by my managers. And therefore, in today's context, the one thing which I always say, that it is the manager who shapes and molds the team members. And today, a manager's effectiveness and a manager's role is far, far more pivotal than it was ever in the past. So I'm only more humbled, and I can only share and show more gratitude to people who have shaped me for what I am today.
That's indeed very wonderful and commendable, we must say. So given your involvement in diversity steering committees and your work in designing gender diversity initiatives, could you discuss some effective strategies you have implemented to promote diversity and inclusion within organizations?
Yes. So, diversity has many strains to it. But if we start talking of the key ones, which kind of cover the initial phases of a diversity and inclusion journey at any organization, they typically gender, LGBT, and the people with disability, the specially abled talent pool. I think fundamentally what I have tried to, in fact, pushed very hard to do in most organizations where I have handled this portfolio is, one, we have to start and initiate this journey from a point of empathy and not from a point of sympathy. That is one. Second, policies need to be based on meritocracy, trust, transparency, not on a quota system. Thirdly, the talent is immense in all these pools. It is our own inhibitions and our own biases and perceptions that we need to get rid of to be able to include them. So our inclusivity, it is work for each one of us who are whether we are hiring managers or we are managers at work, or we are indirectly indirect reporting team members, or working in collaborative spaces, to have that spirit of inclusivity, to include people into positively, have an impact on people from any of these diversity groups. Another thing I have driven is that in none of the organizations where I have worked have I supported or created or implemented policies which are leaning towards a particular gender. All policies have always, in the organizations where I have had the opportunity to work, they have been gender agnostic policies, because I go by the belief that it is the talent that we are recruiting. It is not a form of diversity which we are promoting. If we are including the right talent, the diversity will get taken care of. Thirdly, I think I've been in a way brutal about this, in terms of, don't treat women as a handicap. They don't come with a handicap. They come with a lot of talent. They come with a lot of potential. And I think getting rid of our biases, and looking at them with that only and purely as what is their skill set, what is the competency that they bring to the table. I think that is the conversation that needs to happen across the table. If there is a differently abled candidate, do not downgrade or minus or negate his points because he or she cannot hear or is blind, or there is a physical disability. You do not need to dilute a candidature because of that. If there are different sexual preferences a person has, that is their own space. So I have been very vocal in driving these things from a cultural standpoint in organizations that I have worked with, to the point that all policies have got framed around this fundamental belief that it is about incorporating talent. It is about, and for business reasons, because let me say this out loud and clear once again, that the amount of attrition, and especially in IT, industry like IT, where I have been exposed to for a large part of my career, retention is a big issue. But these are talent pools that have high retentions. Isn't that a business case for us to invest? Isn't that a business case for us to be inclusive? Isn't that a business case for us to shed our biases? So I think those are some things, and that is a thought that I have driven and in organizations that I have been a part of.
That's indeed a very great and a wonderful thought, I must say. And like keeping this thought and mindset is very much important in today's world, because I mean, it's not good to degrade somebody because of, like as you mentioned, just because the person is like visually impaired, or just because they have different preferences or something. Like everything should be just like true to only their talent. So that's indeed a great thought. And yes. So moving ahead, like when we talk about ESG and corporate governance, like we want to know, as an ESG and corporate governance expert, what values do you bring to the table?
See, as a ESG and corporate governance expert, my aim would be to, contribute to building a more sustainable, responsible, and a resilient business, and an organization that can generate value for its stakeholders. In today's day and age, look at the kind of regulatory compliances are there. It is important to, be aware of that and kind of guide and the organization so that they come across as more responsible. There is a whole mechanism around the risk management to identify and mitigate the ESG risks that can have very long-term consequences for any organization. So to safeguard them against that, be more proactive in the assessments, be more innovative in the solutions around it, encourage and drive that positive change in organizations so that they have sustainable practices and they have corporate governance structures and stakeholder engagement methods that promote some of these. I think one key thing which I would also want to focus with organizations on is sustainability, to prioritize the long-term value creation while considering the environmental impacts, the social responsibilities, and the governance practices. I think all of this today translates for me in what I would call the integrity of an organization. So in all, to sum it up, that integrity and that ethical bone in an organization is what I would like to partner with.
That's really very great, we must say. And we wish you all the best for the same.
Thank you.
So when we talk about technology, what are some technological disruptions you foresee in your field with the advent of IoT, AI, ML, blockchain, cloud, digital twin, big data, and Web 3.0?
I think it's going to change the way the world operates, the way the world thinks. If I were to talk about something linked to the previous question around ESG and corporate governance, I think it's going to be a lot of data-driven ESG integration that we will see as a result of the IoT sensors and devices. The AI and the ML algorithms will help us analyze this data with much deeper insights into what are the risks and opportunities, and that will enable a more aware or informed decision making. Then we are already seeing the impact that blockchain has on the transparency in the supply chains. Now, look at the huge opportunity that this is providing us, where we are able to track the origin, the sustainability, credentials of products, ensure the compliances. It's mitigating the risks in such an agile manner around even the forced labor or the environmental violations. So I think it's just opening up the world of opportunity for us tremendously. There's going to be cloud-based ESG reporting and analysis. So data will be available to us at the click of a button. And in terms of even the exposures and enabling the comprehensive analysis of some of these situations and scenarios will become so much easier. The big data analytics also for the stakeholder engagement, that is going to help companies understand the needs and the preferences of their shareholders, link it back to the business value creation, including the employees, the customers, the communities. So the ability and the opportunity to analyze the social media sentiment, provide the customer feedback from different sources of data. I think companies can engage and improve their responsiveness to stakeholders a lot. So there's going to be a lot of disruption. It is going to be a positive disruption. It is going to lead to a lot of decentralized autonomous organizations that will have the potential to transform governance by enabling transparent, democratic, and decentralized decision-making processes. So huge opportunity.
Yes, that's definitely there. So lastly, as you know, we are building a community of industry magnets. The move is meant for cross-pollination of knowledge and building a knowledge-sharing community of corporate giants and industry experts. So what are your thoughts about this initiative taken about by Mr. Zishan Pathan, Mr. Heval Mehta, and the whole World Development Corporation team?
I think I can start off by saying a big thank you to be to create that, bring in that energy and that vibe to build and bring this community together, to create this community in the first place. We are well connected. There is an internet, there are multiple gadgets, and there are multiple apps, and there is WhatsApp, and there are multiple channels, etc. But somehow we don't have the time to find time to connect. And I think this opportunity created by them makes it so much easier. So facilitating that dialogue is leading to a lot of thought leadership. It is creating a lot of disruptive conversations, which is only strengthening the future of work and the way talent is going to transform and the way organizations are going to become more sustainable. the way organizations and compliances that organizations have to adhere to are going to get synthesized. You know, let me take a small example, the labor codes that are coming in. I think this community kind of also gives the impetus for us to brainstorm around some of those things. How will some of these things impact not only from a compliance standpoint, but from a talent sustainability perspective, from a customer experience perspective? So I'd like to thank Mr. Zishan Pathan and his team. I can't thank them enough for what they are doing in building this community and this fraternity that I would love to partner with. I'm very happy to be a part of. It is something which inspires us also to give back to the communities and the organizations that we are a part of, to build the organizations of tomorrow and to strengthen the future of the workplace. So I have only gratefulness and gratitude. So thank you so much for doing that.
These have been really very kind words by you, we must say. So it was fantastic conversing with you, and I'm confident that your insights will inspire future leaders. Thank you so much, Ms. Kashish Kapoor, for joining us today. We wish you the best for your future endeavors. Moreover, trust that this initiative by Directors Institute unquestionably has expanded the participants' understanding and enriched their minds. And all the wonderful different teachings and principles that you've shared with us that you live by, like, throughout your life and everyday life. I'm sure like everyone watching this, it is going to help them grow and inspire in their careers as well. So thank you so much for being with us today on FaceTime with Leaders, and we wish you have a great day.
Thank you so much, Falak. It's been a privilege and lovely talking to you. Thank you.
Same here. Thank you.